Hello, everybody, and welcome to Palantalk episode 6. You may notice that Nick's beautiful beard is not with me today, and so I will do my best to, fill the void. Obviously, I don't have a beard, so I have my hair down today. And so what I'm going to kind of be doing today is I have done quite a bit of research, and we're going to be talking about something that I think is very important and interesting. And so bear with me for a moment while I get all of the streams up so I can monitor all of those um, as we go here. So let me get all of these. Let's see. Yeah, so just bear with me, guys. I gotta figure out how to set up, get all of these chats here. And I will get the last one on my phone here. So we got a lot to talk about today, and so make sure I get all of this up and running here. It's not even as usual. It's just like I have so many live streams going right now because I'm streaming on Banner and Backbone. I'm streaming on Nick's, and I'm streaming on this guy as well here. So I've got one more here to pull up. I got the thing there. So, there we go. All right. I think I got them all. So, okay. All right. Oh my God. I know there's an echo. One of them is on. Hold on, give me one second. All right, so if I look across all three of our live streams here, got 38. I don't know how Nick does this, guys. Holy crap. All right. Well, all right. I got them. I got them all, guys. I did it. I did it. Yeah. So I got 25 here with Nick. I've got 13 here with me and 11 on banner and backbone. So quick math's not my strong suit. 39, 50. 50 of us today. Everybody can hear me, I hope. And we did it. We did it. So um, I got all of us here. We're all here hanging out. Everyone can hear me. Can I just get a thumbs up from somebody somewhere? But I think we're good. All right, Diane coming in clutch. Fantastic. All right, guys, welcome to Palantalk. I am your solo host today. Shane Urick, gonna try and hold it down, bring the energy without my co-host Nick today. He's done it. I can do it. So what are we going to be talking about today? Today we're going to be talking about money. Today we're going to be talking about money because guess what? We live in America, and the old, the phrase "power is money" is not a lie. And so, that's what I really want to highlight today is just how much money we really are looking at. And in the spirit of Palantalk, it's not just money, but we're going to be talking about the PayPal Mafia. So, what is the PayPal Mafia? In short, the PayPal Mafia is the group of individuals who founded and sold PayPal. Now, the two most notable people I'm going to be talking about in this is Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, because they are the backbone and two of the most influential, arguably the sculptors of the Silicon Valley tech industry. And when we look at how things really came to be where they are right now, how they consolidated all of that power, it came from the capital that they generated from the sale of PayPal. And to really understand, I think we need to start from the beginning. And so I have a lot of talking points here, but also it's really important to note just how complex this web is. And I'm not going to be able to touch on every single aspect of this. It's going to be very hard to do this. So my goal here is to give you guys a fundamental understanding of how they got the power and also the level of influence that they were able to achieve. So as we get into this, if you're sitting here, tap that little heart button, tap the crap out of it, because if you do that, it'll go ahead and push the live stream. So I see all three chats here. I want to see hearts going like crazy right next to the chat button. Hi, Kimmy. Love you too. So I want to see hearts going in every single one of these chats. And let's get started here. Good job, everybody. I see it. So PayPal, October 3rd, 2002, eBay purchased PayPal. So it was a $1.5 billion sale. If we adjust for inflation today, That's $2.7 billion worth of capital that went to these individuals, these guys, who had extremist views. We're talking about Peter Thiel, who's a literal Nazi, talking about Elon Musk, who's a psychotic narcissist, also a Nazi. And, you are who you hang out with, right? Like, so you can imagine that the guys who founded this company, right, the C-suite, the people who built PayPal, they're all, at least to some degree, they have similar ideology. You got a $2.7 billion, and I'm going to use the inflated number, okay, because I want to talk in today's terms. $1.5 billion. Hey, Susan. We're looking at $2.7 billion in 2025 going to these guys in a time where the Silicon Valley, the tech industry, is really in its infancy. Elon Musk specifically, he came out of this with a shitload of money. We're talking $175.5 million in 2002. Nowadays, we're looking at $315 million. All right, he had an 11.7% stake in the company, and Thiel came out with a modest $55 million adjusted for inflation. We're looking at $98.8 million. The rest of the team, the rest of the people, individuals, there was still $1.23 billion that was spread out among all of these guys. So one of the most influential factors in terms of capital in this industry came out of this sale here. And so it's a matter of looking at, we're talking about investment and we're talking about Silicon Valley, right? We're talking about startup galore. The tech industry, it was all about risk. It was all about, finding money to back your your goal and your company. The hearts help by pushing up the frequency in the algorithm. So by tapping the hearts, more people are going to be see the Palantalk video in their screen when they log into Substack, or if they're scrolling, they'll see Palantalk. So that's one of the ways you guys can help get more folks in here to Palantalk. It looks like we're already almost up to 100 people across all 3 live streams. So you guys keep it up. It's going to be great. The more people that can get access to this information, the more we're going to be able to kind of spread the knowledge here. So what's interesting to me when you look at all this money specifically is how it was used. And Elon Musk, and I just want to point out too, is that these guys took major risks. Yes, across all 3 live streams, we're looking at almost 100 people right now. Major risk. Like, everything was hedging your bet. And that's always kind of been the idea and the mentality in the Silicon Valley community. But it also tells us a lot about them, looking at their investment history. And I think that's important, especially in the time that we're living in. It's really important to kind of understand the psychology of these guys. So Elon Musk, first thing he does is start SpaceX. First thing he does, and huge risk, because he used $130 million of his payout, right? And we said earlier that his total payout was $175 million. So essentially, he dropped half of his net worth on starting SpaceX. And, it was not until 2008 when he got the NASA contract, it was $1.6 billion, that Musk was really in a position, a really strong position. He also put a lot of his money into Tesla. Ultimately, 6.5 million. He was able to get a controlling share in Tesla. Later on, he ended up pushing the gentleman who started PayPal out. When in 2008 the company was going to go under, he put another 70 million in and effectively was able to take control of Tesla. After which is when he got in that lawsuit, called himself the founder, and pushed the OG guys out of Tesla. These guys they're ruthless. They've always been ruthless, and it just goes to show how um, how intense and how it's this strong arm mentality. Like these guys are cutthroat, and they took this major investment, this money, and they came in and they took over um, a large part of the industry, and they really were able to do so. Like especially when you think about where they went. Musk went into rockets. He went into cars. They went into the tech industry. Um, kind of industrial base, right? How they were building tech, how they were doing these things, how they were building these cars, these rockets. That's where Musk went. And I think it's important to acknowledge that his specific role, when I say role, it seems to me like the ultimate goal here was to gain a major share of different parts of the tech industry. But here's where I think you have Peter Thiel and what he did, and that's kind of the other side of the coin. And I think that's interesting that you have Elon going into this industrial base, the building of the cars, the building of rockets. What does Palantalk stand for? I got a question here. Palantalk is named after the company Palantir, which is we will talk about today. Palantir is a data company or data analytics, and they are a major influence in our government. They are a major influence. They're the largest. Their largest client is U.S. government. They have offices in Israel. They have all of this software for predictive policing, for missiles being able to hit somebody. It's one of those things where Palantir is one of the biggest threats we're facing today, and that's the reason me and Nick started this show. So Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, he took his money and he did something a little different. They do have a contract with ICE. They provide information. They provide software that allows them to identify immigrants, track them down, all kinds of horrible things. And they did just get a big contract through ICE, thanks to Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller went the other direction. So Elon Musk kind of went in and he really aggressively bought a lot of things. He bought Tesla and he also started his own company. And this allowed him to, like I said, take over that industrial base. But Theo went a different direction. He started something called Clarion Capital. That's what he went and did, and based out of San Francisco. Effectively, their idea was we're going to fund tech startups. But what this really was it was a way for those other people who came out of the PayPal, mafia. They were able to come to Peter Thiel and they were able to get major investment. And they did this thing where there was a 0% management fee and a 25% success fee. So they're not charging you to manage your money and to invest, but they're how 25% of your success that goes back. They got up to $8 billion before the 2008 crisis, at which point it went under. But kind of in the middle there, he went and started something called the Founders Fund. And this is what he went and he invested in his buddies, right? This other PayPal mafia companies, some really big names, SpaceX, Stripe, which does all of the payouts for Substack actually, and Airbnb and Palantir, notably. And I have a more comprehensive list of all of the companies that are invested that can be traced back to the Founders Fund a little bit later. But another big thing we need to talk about here is how Peter Thiel really made his money. And it goes back to Facebook. Peter Thiel bought a 10.2% stake in Facebook for $500,000. When he sold his shares, he got $1 billion out of that. But the crazy thing is he went and put all this in a Roth IRA. So when he actually sold all of this afterwards, he came out with $5 billion tax free. Tax free. So he went overnight basically being, mid-level in terms of his profits, obviously very wealthy, to being one of the biggest billionaires out there. So Palantir was founded in 2003. They marketed themselves as a data analytics, anti-fraud tech, and data systems. So they were all about tech security, and it's a great question, Kimmy. No one needs that much money. And also for like intelligence collection, data, counterterrorism. So if you think about when this happened, this is post 9/11. You have the war on terror going on, and you have this company offering massive data aggregation, surveillance tech. They're saying that we can do what these agents on the ground do, from drones, from scrubbing, phone records and all of these things using this tech. So immediately he was able to position this company into a very crucial niche that made them indispensable to the government. And he co-founded Palantir. So when we look, though, at the money that came out of this PayPal buyout, we have to look at a lot of the companies, because there is a lot of companies that that you probably don't know, that came out that that can be traced back to the Founders Fund and the PayPal market. Obviously, Tesla got a large investment from the Founders Fund after Elon became involved. Actually, in 2016, Musk sold Tesla, or Musk acquired Solar City, which for $2.6 billion, which was founded by his cousins. Interesting, right? So putting $2.6 billion into his family. SpaceX obviously can be traced back to the Founders Fund as well. So you see this kind of quid pro quo thing where everyone who was in the PayPal mafia can come to the Founders Fund and they can get money, and they'll help each other, right? You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And this has created this nexus of investment power that is absolutely visible once you start to look at the actual environment itself. Furthermore, these are companies that can also be traced back that might surprise you. LinkedIn. That's right, LinkedIn. That's where everyone puts their resume, where everyone puts their work history, where everybody is going back and forth. The platform for professional dialogue can trace its money back and founding to the Founders Fund, back to Peter Thiel. YouTube, back to the Founders Fund. Yammer. So again, this was more of a corporate communications company that was also traced back to the Founders Fund. Yelp. So Yelp, where you put all your reviews, where you have all of these people. And then you also have Affirm, which was a kind of buy now, pay later kind of situation. Basically, it allowed people to buy things with money they didn't have and pay in monthly amounts here. But what I think is important about this list, and it's not even all of them, but I think the names we're seeing here are important. I also think that one of the interesting things here is a lot of these are communications or consumer use, but all of these companies collect a shitload of consumer data, like a lot of consumer data. Notably, Airbnb is in here as well. But these are all a wealth of consumer data that can be acquired. And I'm not saying that all of them are feeding data into Palantir and the PayPal Mafia's network of data analytics, but I do think that that relationship is significant and warrants attention. So, we're talking about an influence here that anything that .com era, we're talking about that 2.0 era, can pretty much almost every company to some degree can be traced back to the PayPal Mafia. Now, I think YouTube is significant. I think that Facebook was honestly very important, because if you look at how much of a role Facebook has played in shaping modern politics, and you look at the direct connection to Peter Thiel, it's really important to consider that Facebook in and of itself played such a role in the misinformation that allowed MAGA to create these echo chambers. These connections and how they chose to back certain things and curry favor for sure, Levy. Thank you. To curry favor and kind of have that relationship that ultimately is going to pull leverage for them in the future. So, you also have this idea that when we look at a lot of these companies and what they've achieved in the modern narrative, they're almost all indispensable, and they're almost all core in the average American consumer, like YouTube, Airbnb, all of these places, all of these companies where we can look and say without too much, I'm looking for a lot of words here, without too much doubt, that every person in America has at least used these companies at some point. And the ability of the PayPal Mafia to shape the digital space and to shape dialogue and to create change was essential in building MAGA is something that cannot be understated. They also position themselves to shape the the professional dialogue. Like, these guys, since their money really founded the backbone of this space, we also have to consider how important their role was in the founding culture of these companies, and what that really meant for how people in the tech industry were treated, how they go about developing this tech, and the moral sculpture that is the backbone of how things are done. And if you talk to people in the tech industry, it's pretty common that people are going to tell you that it's cutthroat. They don't give a damn. You work your ass off every day till you drop dead, or you're not part of it. And it's about stealing ideas. It's about taking advantage of other people's work. It's about changing how business is done in this modern era. And what we see at this point is, through that money, through that space, and through the evolution of social media and politics, it suddenly made all of these long-term investments invaluable. We're talking about, like, when the first politician used Twitter for the first time, it forever changed the political space. right? Because suddenly you didn't have to go on TV to reach people. Suddenly you could do these tidbits and you could reach millions of people. Um, and even things like obviously Elon acquiring Twitter, making it X. There's so much so much power in controlling the dialogue. And right up to the election, you saw suddenly these companies cut their misinformation policies. They cut the filtering. And also, if you're behind these companies, if you're in the back room, there's an epidemic of bots. These bots are, it's just code, but they go out there and they pretend to be people. They drop comments that are, inflammatory. They engage with users to, um, radicalize them. Because when you control the platform itself, it gives you unparalleled power. I said this before, but Facebook was so influential in the 2016 election, in the 2020 election, and in the 2024 election, because it was where they were able to create these echo chambers. And also, there was a large group of people with limited media literacy that used Facebook. So there's an older demographic that when they went to school, unlike me, a 25-year-old guy who, went to school .com era where I was taught how to verify a source, how to see if a video was fake, how to do citations. These people weren't given that kind of a education. And through no fault of their own, they were very vulnerable to this misinformation sphere. And them having control over this entire industry, because when you have control to such a point that the dynamic in and of itself is, if you want to play in an industry, you have to play by a certain set of rules or you lose, right? That's the capitalist mentality. It's that, like, to truly compete, you need to play the game the way it's being played. And they set the standard for that. You look at how they, I was talking to Lawrence Winterman when I went on the Daily Whatever show with him and Dana. How's it going, Lisa? And he mentioned something called the Overton window. And in essence, it's the kind of acceptable dialogue that is allowed, right, in the public discourse, and how in the last decade or so it's been shifted so far to the right that effectively hate speech is acceptable in our modern discourse and it has been normalized. Well, if you think about how is that possible, and then you think about the people who are backing these major online entities for public discourse, it becomes very obvious that they have so much power in reshaping the public discourse and moving that window. In fact, as the tech social media world evolved, these were the guys who built the algorithm, right? I mean, and the algorithm in and of itself is a monster. But when you think about what the algorithm is, when I say the algorithm, I'm talking about when you scroll on any platform, the algorithm is what decides to put something in front of you. And beyond that, the algorithm takes in a lot of things. And these companies collect data. They collect a lot of data and they sell your data, your metadata. It's a big part of marketing, is you pull all of these different things from your internet activity, your age, your location. Like if you've ever done one of those like surveys or signed up for a website and they ask for your birthday, and you're like, why do they want to know your birthday? Why? Because they're going to turn around and sell your birthday. They're going to put that information out there. And then a company is going to buy that data. They're going to use your birthday and other things that you get, like where you live, or what you're doing, or your search history. And they're going to be able to determine whether or not you will be receptive to certain content. So when you're on Substack and you see Palantalk, there's a reason that Substack is putting Palantalk in front of you. Because based on your other articles that you read, based on other profiles that you like, you're going to want to hang out with me and Nick on Palantalk. You're going to be receptive to our content. And even people who don't know what Palantalk is, who it's their first time here, they're still going to be sent here because they've read things. They're subscribed to other Substacks. So these are the guys who shape the algorithm, and the algorithm doesn't necessarily have to bring you content that you think like that you'll like. It can also feed you content that they want you to see, like misinformation. And that's one of the big things we can see how the algorithm was shaped and used was to move and create echo chambers based on certain demographics, certain areas, certain populations that would be more receptive to misinformation, whether they are more okay with being fucking racist, or the demographic of men under 20, between 20 and 25, are fucking incels, and they can push this anti-women bullshit. They can put Andrew Tate in front of an 18-year-old man just by using the algorithm. They can put anti-Islamic misinformation in front of a 80-year-old conservative man who is more likely to be receptive to that. And this is all because they shaped the space. They were the people developing these things. Like when you look at R&D, when you look at since 2000, the early 2000s, these were the guys who were dominating the industry. And eventually it became exceptionally beneficial for them to, we let go of the moral aspect. And I don't really think these guys had morals at all, but what I do think is they got more emboldened as time went on, and their ideology in and of itself was always anti-democratic. It was anti free speech. It was anti-equal rights. It was misogynistic. It was patriarchal. And it was part of this neo-reactionary movement. Exactly, Levy. It's the other side of the bell curve. So once they had gotten to a point where they had this power, it was only a matter of time before they chose to exploit it. And that's kind of where we are at this point, is that we're starting to see just how much they know about us and the shaping of an entire political party. Like, the reality is MAGA would not exist without Facebook. It wouldn't. They would not have been able to radicalize millions of people without Facebook. They would not have been able to radicalize millions of people without X, because this is how they reach a demographic that's vulnerable. They know certain people are receptive. A lot of these people don't watch the news, so they wouldn't be able to reach these people through standard means. A lot of these people don't read, so they wouldn't be able to reach these people through standard means. But by having control of the algorithm and having no moral compass and no issues with using and abusing misinformation to create echo chambers and lock people in, because if they choose to feed someone the algorithm, their algorithm is personalized, right? So your algorithm is specific to you. When I go on a social media platform, I'm getting a curated version of reality. And I think that's really important to highlight, because what it's done is it's created all of these like single tracks. Yes, Jessica, that's a good point. And I will touch on that in a second. But they've effectively created all of these single tracks where everyone is on their own road. So everyone is seeing what they want to see, because we're more likely to engage with a platform if we're seeing content that we like. If we're scrolling and scrolling and we keep seeing stuff we're not interested in, or that makes us uncomfortable, or that we don't agree with, we're gonna get up. Like, why would I stay scrolling if like I am an anti-trans person and I see all this information that is counter to the narrative of, oh, what, trans people aren't mass shooters, like trans people aren't dominating, men's and women's sports. Like, I'm not interested in that. Why? Because people are literally enslaved by their own confirmation bias. So I like that Jessica brought up TikTok, because the unique thing leading up to the election, I think, is that TikTok coming out of China and being based outside, and the TikTok algorithm was literally the holy grail. Like, TikTok was the most used social media platform, and I think still is, in the United States. It was a hotbed for political dissent. It is why they were able to, they struggled to control the narrative, because people on TikTok could not be censored. TikTok was uncensored, whereas if you go on Instagram or Meta or Facebook, they have the ability to take down your content. They have the ability to remove it. They can ban users indiscriminately. Like, we saw Elon Musk like ban a bunch of people like on X. Like, he does it all the time. Like, he'll just ban their account because they don't agree with the ideology. Like, they can ban terms like Palestine. And up until the TikTok shutdown, TikTok, after that, 24-hour period went away, was different. And just about every TikTok user will tell you that. But it feels more like a meta algorithm, and you also started to see censorship on TikTok you didn't see before. So it was crucial that these guys in the PayPal mafia that were not able to dominate the digital discourse, they had to take out TikTok, and because it wasn't part of the empire that they had built, um, and so TikTok had to go. So this continued discussion about TikTok, and I really do think that TikTok in and of itself is already kind of compromised. But I think if they do finalize this sale, they're going to be able to. What they really, really want is the algorithm, right? Because the TikTok algorithm is like, it sucks people in. It sucks people in. It's crazy, and people will just go on TikTok for hours on end. One of the things I did was I was a creator on TikTok for some time. I paint miniatures for a game called Warhammer 40,000. But I built a TikTok. I got it up to almost 10,000 people sharing my painting and what I do, my art and whatnot. But when I was a creator on TikTok, I didn't scroll on TikTok, because TikTok, when you scroll, it like sucks you in. It's like a black hole. And I've been this way for a long time, ever since I was in high school. And I would, look around and I would see, what Instagram did to my peers. It made people depressed. People literally killed themselves over Instagram. Like, how many followers you had was like a metric of how cool you were. Like, it hurt people. Like, psychologically, it did damage. So I got off Instagram a long time ago, and I don't really engage on these platforms. Like all these young guys at my work and whatever, like, have you seen this meme? And I'm like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. Because I don't engage in that space, and it's for my own mental health. And as a creator on TikTok, uh, like, I never looked at the algorithm. I was focused on my own, what I was doing. And on Substack, what I think is fantastic and what I like about Substack is that you are reading articles. I think the live aspect is really cool as well. Being able to do these podcast shows, I think, is really awesome. But I really like the reading aspect, that you post an article and you're sharing your writing. And I think that helps kind of counter the algorithm in the sense that you don't get sucked in the same way. So, to kind of balance off of the algorithm, we should really talk about as well just how influential the development of AI was as well. But I think more so than AI, how they were able to make their AI indispensable in regards to the military. And I want to talk a little bit about Palantir and thank you, Freedom Bird. I want to talk a little bit about Palantir and the military and just how much they are involved. And I also want to talk about where where that puts the American people and what Elon Musk did in the White House. And I think that Palantir One has contracts with literally every single branch of the military, and they develop these AI systems that allow the military to be better, be faster, be more predictive, and make the United States military the most potent military in the world. Nick talks about this all the time. And it's because of their systems, because of the technology they're using. I like to point out that when the Israel-Iran conflict started, that first day, Israel killed like half of the command structure. It killed like all like the leader of their military, killed all their nuclear scientists, all these people, and it like hit them in their houses. It wasn't like they were all in a building and there was like one strike. No, like they got hit in their apartments, they got hit in their cars, they got hit wherever. And it's because Israel is incredibly deeply paired up with Palantir. Palantir opened up a headquarters in Jerusalem, okay, because Palantir uses Israel's constant aggression, their constant willingness to kill people, and effectively, they're constantly conducting military operations, and they're also going about using it to, in my opinion, develop their crowd detection tech, and their assassination tech, and all of these things that are absolutely critical if you are trying to enforce a form of martial law on a large population. These systems, which were formally built out in the war on terror, right, to find these terrorist leaders, they've been refined for over 2 decades now, right? And they are getting better and better and better at finding people. And that's why me and Nick talk about minimizing your metadata, wearing face coverings in public, trying to avoid things like flock cameras, because all of these programs like Gotham, they use all of that data and they take it and they put it together and they can find you, they can predict things you're going to do in a way that is unparalleled and is absolutely super scary. Now, all of that said, I want to talk about Doge, because Doge was a lot of things. And not only does it entirely destabilize, our government, China. China's interesting. I did an episode with Nick that I recommend you go and check out if you in the recent Palantalk episodes. You can find them on the Banner and Backbone Substack. But the use of Doge was really to get private data. So one of the important things about data in the United States government is that there was not a centralized database. And that's super important in terms of protecting our privacy, like Social Security, was as long as you keep a certain database decentralized, it's basically like you have a bunch of separate vaults. And even if someone broke into one, they couldn't get everything. Well, this was a problem because Palantir, to effectively police and predict an entire population if they're going to form some form of techno-fascist autocracy, which is absolutely what they're trying to do. All you have to do is look at Peter Thiel's ideology and his love of the neo-reactionary movement and the writings of Purvis Yarvin and where J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller are positioned and the way executive orders have been written and being put out and all of the benefits that exist in this era of techno-fascism and who's really pulling the strings. But You know, to not digress here, Elon's job was to go in and get all the data from these decentralized databases. And that's what he did, right? We saw him systematically go through all of these agencies, and his goons would literally go in there and they would take all of the data and they would leave. And they fire all these people too. But in the process of gutting these agencies and effectively destroying them, the real goal was to go into our government and get our data so that Palantir and Peter Thiel could build a database that allowed them to effectively find and surveil every single United States citizen. That means they have your tax records. That means they have your social security information. That means they have all of your medical records. That means they have, every single thing that the government has, they now have, they have aggregated it, and now they are able to collect that data and use that against every single one of us. So now imagine that every time you go on the internet, they're able to pull that and add that to a profile on you. So everybody now has a profile. And then Elon left. What's crazy is he just fucking left. He went in there and he left. And right after he left, he dropped the Epstein bomb, and Trump has been dealing with that ever since. Do I think that's a coincidence? Personally, I don't. Personally, I think that they want to put JD Vance in power because he's Peter Thiel's puppet, and he was funded by Peter Thiel, and you can trace back everything JD Vance was down to when he was at frickin' Yale. To Peter Thiel and his ideology. So they're intrinsically linked, the two of them, and it's no coincidence that he was in power. Lastly, I think what I want to talk about here is how we go about, looking at how the techno-fascist group has really been able to be triumvirate of evil, right? So I did a live stream on this as well, and I recommend you go over to the Firebrand Project and watch that, because I talk in depth about Stephen Miller, JD Vance, and Peter Thiel. And effectively, around the President of the United States, the Chief Deputy of Policy, Stephen Miller, has unilateral power, like universal power over pretty much United States policy. He's a de facto president. So Donald Trump signs executive orders, but who's more powerful, the person who signs the executive order or the person who writes it, right? And that's the distinction, is Trump is allowed to be in power, but at the end of the day, he's not the person calling the shots. JD Vance is there, and he's there to step in. And I, again, don't think it's a mistake that Elon Musk dropped the Epstein files. I think that Trump is becoming more and more unpredictable, and that is a massive problem for the technocracy, in that without having the ability to kind of predict or influence him, there is it throws a wrench in their plans, because it's hard to, at the end of the day, like when he's truthing at 4 a.m. and he says, I'm gonna bomb Iran, like that's like, they're like, fuck, like, oh my God. I also will say though that Stephen Miller's position allows him to like plant these ideas in Trump's head, and he is definitely a major influence on Trump and Trump's ideology. And he says, hey, let's do this, and Trump says, cool, I like it. That's good. I like Mein Kampf too. It's a great read. So the last thing is Levy asked for solutions. And to be honest with you, Levy, the only solution is that we that I see that is feasible is we take back Congress. We need to vote all of these people out. We need to fill Congress with people who give a shit about democracy. And we need to impeach the Supreme Court. We need to impeach the president. We need to basically get everybody out. That is the means for a legal governmental solution that is still there for us. And we can vote for that. And I think that's very important because if we can take back Congress, Congress is the most important arm of our government, and Congress can make the laws to effectively curtail the presidency, to cut the balls off of the executive branch, because we are now learning that it can be used to absolutely undermine our democracy. And, the president can be a de facto king if he influences the Supreme Court and if he influences Congress enough. Now, I think they're losing the majority. I think it's very possible, and I firmly believe that by the midterms, pending they don't start a war and declare martial law and suspend elections, which I think they're going to try and do, we will take back the Congress and the Senate. The people are fed up with this shit, and we can impeach and remove them. And I think it's very possible if we get back Congress. That's the solution. Registered as unenrolled. Yep. So they're going to try and fuck with a lot of the voting as well. They're going to do everything they can to make sure that the midterms are in some way undermined, because that really is a solution. But I also want to point out a silver lining. And I'm not saying it's a solution, but I am saying that when we look at the history, when we look at all of the things that we talked about in the beginning of this episode, with how Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and the PayPal mafia, how they were able to become so powerful, is they are reckless. And Clarion Capital freaking crashed. It got screwed because it was all about just hedging everything and finding success. And Neil banked that the dollar would continue to drop, and it didn't in 2008. And Clarion Capital went under. Of course, at that point, he had other means. He made his $5 billion off of Facebook and whatever, and that wasn't going to be, an issue for him. But the important point here is that these guys risk it all. And that does carry over to the techno-fascist coup we're seeing right now. They put all their eggs in one basket. So if we are able to throw a real wrench in their plans, this too will crumble. And that's what I think is really important for us to realize as well, is like we need to fight like hell right now, because if we're able to turn this over, to flip it on its head, we can capitalize on the fact that they commit everything. So in doing that, they are vulnerable, and as long as we are ready and willing and on the money to take these guys out, when the mistake comes. But the other big thing is talking about them. You have to talk about them. Every single one of you guys here, we're at 100, so 96, 37, 44. We're well over 100 people in the realm of, my quick math is not going to be a thing, but close to 170 people right here, right now. What if you guys want a solution? If you guys want to work towards stopping this, you guys need to talk about it at your dinner table. You need to talk about it with your friends, because me and Nick talk about this a lot. And I say this all the time. The real war we're fighting is for hearts and minds. So we need to fight for the public discourse. And that is something they're losing right now. It is. I mean, it's undisputed. Look at their crackdown on free speech. Look at them panicking about the Epstein files. They are not currently in control as they would like to be. Like they're taking people off the air because they feel like they can't control the dialogue in another way. So Levy, an important point you said is important line to Midas. I don't know. I really don't know why Midas doesn't talk about these things. I don't. Like, I don't know if, I honestly think that the real reason is that they know that if they talk about it too much, their platform is too big. I think they'll get striked off of YouTube, and they'll get taken down. So I think they avoid certain things because they know the fallout would be effectively devastating for them. And I understand that. I do think that's probably why, is if they were able, if they did try and highlight these things too much, I think that they would be like, they would lose their Instagram overnight. If they have a presence on Facebook, they would get striked out. YouTube, I think they would get striked out. So I think that's why they don't do it. But that's why it's so important that we have shows like Palantalk, where me and Nick can talk about these things, because the one thing they can't control is what you and me and your neighbor and everyone else says. So I want to point out one thing. We're over 11, so we need to go to my favorite part of Palantalk, where we leave Earth and go to space. However, there's one thing I want to say here, and if we can do this, I think it would be significant. Because mind you, the fallout between Elon and Trump was partly because people were saying that Elon Musk was president. Okay, so everyone was saying Elon Musk was president. The one thing we know about Donald Trump is that he fucking is a massive, massive narcissist. And he wants to be king. He wants to be perceived as king. That was part of the deal. So he wanted to throw Elon out. He hated him. So what we can do is we can change, and we got to do it again. We do it again. Instead, this time it's Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is the president. Donald Trump isn't the president. It's Elon 2.0. Stephen Miller is the president. If we push that, oh my God, if we push that narrative, if we drive that, and make memes about Stephen Miller being the president, tell everyone Stephen Miller is the president. We have to get the reporters in the press room telling Trump that people are saying that Stephen Miller is the president. That's how we get Stephen Miller thrown out of the White House. That is how we throw a wrench in their control over the president. We need to take their avenue for power, their means for power, their direct control over the president is Stephen Miller. He's dictating policy. That is the key. We need to destroy the relationship between Trump and Stephen Miller. So everybody here, your mission is to go on Substack. Okay, we're all on Substack. After this live, your mission, all 180 of you, is to go and make a note. Go and make a note saying and telling everyone that Stephen Miller is the president. I don't care if you have 0 subscribers. I don't care. Everybody go and make a note and say Stephen Miller is the president. He's really the one in charge. And Donald Trump, and say Stephen Miller is Elon Musk 2.0. Donald Trump's not the president. Okay? Every single one of you. Flood the algorithm and start it, because if we can push it, if we can get it to go viral, it will affect the relationship 100%. So, all of that said, what we're going to do now is we are going to go to space. I just need to find. There we are. Welcome, my friends. We're done. We've left Earth. We've left the regime behind, and it is time to talk about space. So last time, we went and looked at JWST images. And I think that we should go and do that again. Um, and, because there's so many cool pictures of space. Like, we gotta go and see, like, let's look at, let's find, so I'm gonna find some really quick. I'm gonna find some pictures of space for us to look at here. Um, and we'll stop. We won't think about. We're not gonna think about all this other shit. Um, we're gonna think about space. We're gonna do that instead. So here we are. Let's see if I can figure this out. Here we go. So here I am, and let's take a look here. If I can find it, I don't know where it is. All right. So look at this. We have Hubble here in 2016. And this is a supernova. Wow, check that out. That's awesome. So, I mean, it's just one of those things too, where if we look at the quality of this image, okay, what it was, and through Hubble, which was our best way to see, space. Look at how we're able to clarity here, and you can see, if you look here, look at how kind of fuzzy this is. You can see behind this all of these extra stars that weren't there, right? You see things like this, and this is what makes the James Webb Space Telescope incredible. Is that what you have here? These are all, I think these are supernovas. I think that's what they're saying here, is that um, each of these little dots are supernovas, which is pretty phenomenal. Pretty phenomenal. I mean, look at that, right? So all of these two, if you look at some of these things they're stretched out, these galaxies, look at all these galaxies. I mean, space it scares a lot of people, and I mean, I can understand that it really is something that um, it's big and overwhelming, but for me, it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. All of the everything that's out there. I mean, every single one of these is a galaxy. It's not a solar system. It's not, it's or even a region. It's a galaxy. It's Our galaxy is so big. It's unfathomably big. Like we will never, unless we discover some form of travel, but the way space works, the way it's expanding, there's a literal limit to where we will be able to go because the way space is expanding. There's like a horizon where eventually it will be moving away from us faster than the speed of light. So there is an actual limit to where we will be able to go and what we will be able to see. Um, and that is so almost incredible to me that what we're able to see now, eventually, as the universe moves away from us faster than the speed of light, these will disappear. So we are so lucky in this moment in time to be able to see these galaxies, to see these stars, because if by some miracle we survive, um, you know, our species survives our turbulence here and we make it into the future, these things will disappear. So we are exceptionally lucky that we live in a time where we can see how beautiful this galaxy, this universe we live in actually is. And I think that's spectacular. Because eventually, and I'm talking billions and billions and billions of years, we will only see darkness because everything will have moved away from us so far that these things will just disappear. This is another fantastic picture of Uranus. I mean, like, how cool is that? Because if you look and see like the original pictures that we got from like Voyager and Hubble, you don't see these rings. Like, look how magnificent this is. It's just beautiful, just stunning. This is even better. Wow, this is, oh my God. I mean, look at that. I haven't seen this one before. That is stunning, stunning. And you can see in the background around it, you have these galaxies. Wow, it's beautiful, 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 beautiful picture. And this is what you get from decades of smart people working together and mind you, this was not for profit. This was NASA doing basic research and taking their time to build something that freaking works. This is an example of what we are capable of if we don't operate solely for profit, if we actually take the time to do something that will matter and that will expand our capabilities and our knowledge. And that's the problem with this for-profit system and how they're trying to privatize space travel and all these things. Is if it's for profit, there's no incentive for them to put in extra time because time is money, right? So they're going to try and get a product as fast as possible. Wow, what is this? Free floating brown dwarf. Look at that. It's almost like you have this like nebula. It looks like gas or something as it does this like orbit. And sometimes that's true, right? So you'll have stars. And if you have like two stars or planets, right? There's rogue planets. If you have two stars orbiting each other, what'll happen is if they are orbiting and one is stronger, sometimes they will slingshot like a smaller star or a planet out into space. And you just have like planets and stars that are just hurtling through space all by themselves. They're not in a solar system or anything because for whatever reason they have been flung out of their home. And here, this is, you can see the brown dwarf. Okay. See, yeah, it looks like, so here's like a galaxy, a star cluster or something, and it's out here. There's a bunch of them. Wow. What the heck is that? Oh my God. An exploded star. Wow. So this is, that's exceptionally beautiful. It's so beautiful, but like the level of destruction, like the sheer violence, and I use that in a sense of just explosive power. Like this must have been insane. I mean, truly insane. Like the plasma and everything as this thing implodes or explodes, but it's so beautiful. Like things that are so massive and truly destructive are also so beautiful, and it's something that we can see from millions, probably hundreds of thousands to millions of light years away. Um, wow. All right, friends. Thank you so much for coming to Palantalk today. It was a true pleasure to have you. Next week, Nick will be back, and we will be going more into the article, The Defense Reformation, that we were looking at last episode. But I'm happy to end our discussion today out here in the cosmos instead of on Earth. But I will say that it's been a true pleasure. And lastly, to note, please go and subscribe to Banner and Backbone. It is truly, we do it every week, Levy, every week at 10 a.m. PST. Subscribe to Banner and Backbone. Also, right now, my publication, The Firebrand Project, is currently 93 in culture. If you guys can go and become paid subscribers to the Firebrand Project right now, I'm doing a 50% off deal. That's going to help us move up the leaderboard, and that's going to help us get more visibility. I also recently wrote a Firebrand investigation, and I looked deep into racial violence in the South, and it is dedicated to Trey Reed, the young man who was lynched in Mississippi at Delta State University. So if you could go and read that article, share that article, and also subscribe to the Firebrand Project and Banner and Backbone. It's only $3 for a monthly subscription to the Firebrand Project for life, because if you do it while the steal is running, it goes in perpetuity. So forever and ever, it's only $3. I wrote an article for Levy. I wrote an article recently about racial violence in the South. Yes, the Firebrand Project, correct. It's my publication here. So, I mean, this is one of those times, guys, where it's so important we talk about these things, including things we talked about today. Make sure you go drop one on Stephen Miller and Trump. Remember Elon 2.0. It's gonna be a tough time, but me and Nick are gonna be here every week. The Banner and Backbone team is gonna be here, and we're gonna keep talking about it, even as the mainstream media bends the knee. That's why it's so important you guys go and become paid subscribers to all of us, because it helps us keep doing this, because it's up to us now to speak out as we see mainstream media bending the knee. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for tuning into Palantalk this week. Make sure you go and subscribe to the Firebrand Project, to Banner and Backbone, and Sick of This Shit with Nick. I appreciate each and every one of you once more, and I will see you next week.